go, and we still don't have that much. I mean, I sort of feel like the last few months have been like driving down a road where all the signposts have been taken down, like all the direction stuff that you would anticipate to be there. And that's like in our personal lives, and that's also our church lives. And so when Oscar said, yeah, we closed in March, when we had that decision, we had to make that decision quickly, and we had to think about what that meant, and then we had to pivot towards online churches as quickly as possible. But I actually don't think we had a conversation at that point at all about how long. This is just sort of like we were in reaction mode, and we just did what needed to be done, and then we figured out so many things. So I would say if there's been any sort of one thing, it's really been that adaptability. I feel like we have adapted, and we have continued to adapt and adapt after that, and we'll keep adapting as the situation goes. But I'd say that's been one of the things that I'm really proud of all of our volunteers and our staff, is just that ability, to keep trying new things and keep trying to stay connected. I think, one of the things that we've talked a lot about it as a board is how to be apart but together. And I think we're still figuring that out. And I don't pretend that we have any of the answers, permanently, but it's been strange normally just not to have a plan, because, what the ironic part about this is that the board had just finished a strategic plan where we had, 2 services was a big part of that. And with all the growth projections and all of that stuff was really just humming along. I mean, the 2 services thing was going really well, and we were seeing increasing numbers of people in those services, and people were starting to get that rhythm, and then suddenly we weren't. And, so it's hard in some ways not to lament the demise of all your plans, but I'm sure every one of us knows what that feels like personally as well. So that's the way it's been for me. So I think the one thing, last part of Oscar's question is what stands out. And I think it's the adaptability, but also the continuing need for adaptability that we've seen. It's just, for me, that's just been the most striking thing.
And one of the things that I want to talk about is how the board and the executive committee stepped up, and we meet every week to deal with what the new problems were. And I think one of the really important things for us fiscally this year is the money that we got from the government for our budget, and that made up for our loss in income. That was very helpful. And I really appreciate Trevor, because I left town in February and didn't get back into town until March 9th. I'd been on a cruise, and all of this was wide open, and I hadn't had email. And I walk into this board meeting, we're dealing with all these problems, and Oscar and Trevor, my vice president, really stepped up to clue me in on what was going on. And then we started meeting equally, and weekly. Regional UUA had meetings for presidents and treasurers to keep us abreast of what was going on around the country. And then we got the word, I think it was in May, that the national president of UUA was saying, we recommend that churches perhaps stay closed through May of 2021. And that's when we as a board really realized, this is a long-term thing. We need to start thinking about how we're going to do this in the future, not just day to day. And I think we should really appreciate the new board members who saw how much work we were doing and stepped up to be a part of solving this problem for the future. And I think a lot of credit goes to Oscar and his staff. They just worked numerous hours and really stepped up and put our things on Zoom and that sort of thing. And I felt really bad because I'm not a technology person. And so I wasn't of any help in implementing all of these different things. The staff was just marvelous, and we really need to appreciate that.
And I would echo everything that Trevor and Emily have said. But in addition to that, I am in awe, absolute incredible awe of the board's recommendation to have a task force for dismantling white supremacy. And not only that, but putting their money where their mouth is. And even though we are in this crazy sort of living virtually kind of environment, we're still moving forward towards living our principles in a very real way. And that has been incredible for me personally. And I think the other members of the task force would agree with that, that in spite of all the challenges, in some ways, this situation has allowed us to really start making traction on our work towards anti-racism. And so that's been a huge part of what I've been working on, particularly this summer and will be this fall.
I'll say that there was something wonderful about a complete stop in March. Actually, it was like an extended snow day for a little while. I mean, just to have everything slow down was an interesting. It was good for me, actually. I often think of it still as March. It feels like it's March 97 or March whatever day it is. So these months have flown by, and I joined the board in June. So naivete helps a lot, you know, not knowing what you're getting into, but showing up is everything. And I like the technical shift that this pushed us into. I miss seeing everybody, but the people who were going to take the leap to technology had to do it fast. So I think there is some good about it. The thing about place, I'm on that committee looking at the history of the church, and place matters in our culture as a community. And so getting back to an open building sometime in 2021, I think is going to be a target that we're all going to be thankful for, and we'll appreciate it when we get back there. But I am happy the board said we'll stay closed through the church year. It takes the pressure off of everybody who feels like they're missing something. The only thing I regret is that there's a group of people that we've lost along the way because they just they're not interested in the technology. And we've been working hard as a membership umbrella committee to reach out, as has Pastoral Care, to reach out to those people. But some of them think the church is open and they've just chosen not to go. So, I mean, just getting through to some people about the technology is really interesting. But that's all I have to say.
I think moving forward, that even when we reopen, that we need to continue providing things electronically, like live streaming our services so people in the community can have access, and our people in nursing homes and not well enough to come, and people that have conflicts with service, that we really started using a lot of technology, and I think that that is instrumental going forward to have that as a part of our life.
So as we go forward into this coming year, what are some things that you're looking forward to? You know, we've talked quite a bit about sort of the changes we've had, but of the things that we might do in the next 12 months for our panelists, what has you excited these days?
I'm excited about the creativity this is forcing us into. We have to find ways to make it work, because I think we all know we want to be together. So we find ways to make it work. I think it'd be great if the auction continues to work, and it sounds like that's possible. So Julie Anderson has made that choir work, and that is a miracle. And I think Julie I'd love to hear what she has to say about how you convinced people to take the ride with you.
Oh, you know, they're just, I don't know, we just said, we got to try this. We got to figure out something, all right? We've got to make music together. And for now, especially when we thought it was going to be a couple of months, we thought maybe, you know, as a short term, we can do this. And I honestly don't know. When I watched the first videos that came in, I got teary because it's such a brave and vulnerable thing to record yourself and send it to someone, especially those people. The last rotation we did, they were people who didn't know me. They were strangers, and they sent their voices in to be shared. And it was actually pretty emotional for me, because it is a leap. And I'm not sure, except that we all just kind of muddled through it together and said, let's figure this out. And, you know, that was that.
Julia felt a need.
Thank you.
But I think that's it. When that need, when you say we'll figure it out, and everybody feels like they're part of the process, that's our authentic culture of this church, is to have everybody's voice heard. So I'm excited about that continuing creativity of hearing people's voices, whether we have to go to their apartments and knock on their door to hear their voices, or if they're able to come to technology. That excites me. I also liked all the different churches this summer, visiting all those UU churches. Awesome.
Yes, what I think will be an opportunity now is to have classes like the class offered this fall through Oscar's role with the, what is it, Committee on Christian Unity something. But we get to reach out to other UU congregations that way, and we'll have, you know, there might be classes all year where congregations can participate together across the country.
One of the things I'm excited about is our beloved conversations that we're promoting for this fall. You can be in pods with people from across the country, so we can become friends with people in other UU churches and get ideas on what to do with racial justice in our church and in other areas, because we'll be connecting with all these people across the country.
I'm excited to see what Oscar and our worship arts folks are coming up with for our services. There's been some vague promises made that it's going to be something slightly different than what we're used to. So as far as quality of production and so forth. And so I'm excited to see what folks have come up with.
Being super selfish, but this is the most amount of church services that I've seen maybe in my whole 10 years of being a DRE at this church. Because usually I leave with the children, right? We do the story and then I go back with the children and make sure everything's doing fine in Sunday school. But because of the different timing and nothing overlapping, I'm actually able to watch a worship service, which is lovely.
Yeah, I would like to just, reiterate about, what Judy said about creativity and, Emily about the beloved conversations pieces and all the other things that we're doing. I think one of the things I am excited about is that we're starting to really think about this. And it's not easy, and I don't want to downplay how hard this has been and is, but we're starting to think about this as not returning to normal, but really creating a new normal for the church. And to me, that is hard. Because I have those moments where like, why can't it just be the way it was? But it's also exciting to think about what we can do better. And I know some of the things that we're already doing. Emily talked earlier, the first question about uses of technology. I just don't see some of this stuff ever changing for us in terms of how we're doing that. I mean, I see us doing, board and committee meetings via Zoom in ways that and I would love to see people again. I don't want to do this 100%, but I have to say it's really, really nice sometimes just to be able to roll into a meeting and roll out of a meeting with you guys, and not have to put on shoes. I look forward, that I like. So I am excited about the new ways that we're starting to think about sort of these services. And I do feel like my vision for this is that we will have, once even we're back into the building, we're going to have more hybrid types of services where people are going to be able to participate and engage in more meaningful ways who aren't physically connected with us. And I think that's exciting. We were already starting to move that direction, but this has forced us to be innovative. And I do feel like that's the good part that can come out of a crisis, is that push for innovation. And it's hard, and it will continue to be hard, but I am excited about the possibilities. I'm excited about the possibilities we haven't even thought of yet, because we've been thinking about so many. Just if you think about how much has changed for us so quickly, next 3-6 months, we're gonna have even more, and that's cool. And that's fun.
So the other side of that question about what we're looking forward to is for our panelists. What do you see as the primary challenges of the coming congregational year? What are the things that are keeping you up at night as you worry about the next 12 months?
Oh, this is an easy one for me because everybody's heard this from me already, and I'll keep talking about it. Money. I mean, money is absolutely, the board has a couple big responsibilities. One is to ensure that the organization is focused on the mission of the church and carrying that out. But the other part is to ensure financial solvency, and that is absolutely one of our core responsibilities, and this is a really challenging year for that. So we're absolutely concerned about what that looks like, and I think we're doing, and I'm deeply grateful. It feels strange to worry about this when our church has been in such an amazing financial position, and so many of you on this call are part of the reason for that. But we came into this pandemic without debt, without an iota of debt, and that is enormously important to our financial future. And no matter how you feel about PPP money, that is why we have not had to lay anybody off or reduce anybody's hours. That's the reason why, because our budget, everybody's pledges are hugely important, but earned income, rentals, things like that we have lost for this time period, that's a big chunk of our revenue. And so losing that and having it at least be offset by the PPP was, made us not to have to make some very uncomfortable decisions. But certainly, one of the things that we're looking at is, hopefully that people can maintain or increase their pledges going into next year, because we know we're not going to see the level of rentals. I mean, we're really grateful that we've got the Blue Stem contract. I think that's good for Blue Stem. It's good for the church. So we got some rental income, but we know we're not going to see the return that we've had. So we are going to have a drop in revenue. And so this is a concern, because we know, our staff have been doing an amazing job, really been doing well, but, we have to have the resources in order to pay people. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night, but that's what I'm here to do, is worry about that. So I'm sure there are more fun things that people are worried about.
I think across Lincoln and across rural Nebraska, we'll see a lot of small churches not able to stay open. And I think we need to thank people like Mary Summermeyer and the people that were involved in the renovation of the church, how they did the financial planning and paid off the debt. That kind of fiscal responsibility that we see in the past has led us now for the future to be able to continue to operate, because we do not have debt payments to make. And I think that it's very important that the survey that was sent out, that you return that, because when we make plans for the budget for next year, we need to have an idea of whether people are going to be able to keep the pledge that they made this year, or whether they're going to have to lower it, or whether they can perhaps increase by 10%, because then we'll be able to make plans that are realistic. I think that's very important for the people that are planning the pledge campaign, because when you plan the campaign, it's nice to have an idea up front where we're going to generally be, so you can develop the budget, which we're already beginning to work on, based on what is realistic. And of course, most of our budget is our staff, so that if we are not able to maintain the level that we're at this year in pledges, we may have to reduce hours and that sort of thing in relationship to staff.
I'm concerned about the election and the fallout after the election. If you think back to 4 years ago, it was a challenging time for our church, because it seemed to get political in our church, and there were a couple of people who stopped coming to church because they felt it was too political. Whether they believed it, whatever side they were on, it didn't matter. They just didn't want to have that in the church building, and that concerns me. And there were a couple of new members who had come on in February of 2017 and left right away because it was a toxic atmosphere, actually.
I think we need to remember that Roman Hruska, who was our state senator, was one of the Unitarians here in Nebraska, and he was a Unitarian historically because his family were Unitarians in Transylvania. And many of us, when we view things, we think, well, everybody's liberal. Well, the church is separate from politics, and we have people with all kinds of political leanings, and we need to be respectful of the different points of view.
And I'm just going to reiterate that finances are definitely a big part of my worry. It's possible, even probable, that 2021 is going to be economically more grim than 2020. And so making sure that the church is prepared and has a realistic budget going into 2021 is super important. So there's my 2 cents.
I agree. I think it's challenging, though, to, we used to be able to look forward and think that we could be right in our projection. And I think that's a challenge for us, is to say, what if it's to have multiple strategies? You know, if everything's good, this is our strategy. If everything's mediocre and if everything collapses, this needs to be our strategy. So I hope that the board will consider multiple possibilities.
One of the things I said I wouldn't talk, so I'll just be brief. But one of the pieces for me, I think that's related to the election, but it's also related to just the world that we're in right now, is that the church is not a place that endorses candidates for office. The Johnson Amendment's super clear on that. Our tradition is super clear on that. That's a place we don't go. But what that does not mean is that the church doesn't have a moral opinion on matters. And so this is not a time in history for a whole lot of equivocating. And so there are going to be moments like putting up a banner on the side of our building that says Black Lives Matter, that are a compelling statement that the moment calls for, but it's a statement that may make us less popular, right? Every time I get up and give a sermon like that, I'm well aware that we in some ways narrow the number of people that will see us as aligned with them. And this is a moment that cries out. I mean, we just, churches can't be silent right now about a whole lot of things. And I think finding ways to balance that need to speak out with the realities of this needs to be a going concern long term. That's the other thing that churches are, is you know, long-term generational projects, and finding ways to do both of those things at once is tough. Keeps me up at night. I'd say it raises my hairline, but it's gone now.
Fritz, do you know how we were during the Depression when you've done the 150 things? Have you looked into financial issues of whether how the church dealt with people not having as much money? Is there any history of that?
There's lots of history, and some of it is as yet undiscovered. And I know enough to know that well, I know Arthur Weatherly's salary was cut during that period of time, and I don't remember the supporting staff dimensions to the congregation. But frankly, I would hope that this body would charge the group that's focusing on that area, which is Judy. I think that's in your ballpark, Judy, 1930s, and also Frank and Mary Kay. That's good history to remind ourselves of. As we clearly have been through financial challenges, and that the 30s, the Depression was not the first. The Depression was probably the third of our major financial challenges, and I think that it was not the last either. We've had other financial challenges. So thanks for the question, Emily. It's a great question. The fact that we're still here tells you something.
I,
But
I
we're not still here as we were when we started the congregation way back 150 years ago. There was a financial time that took the Universalist Church out.
Not quite. Close. You're very, but we can discuss what out means.
Okay, change to Unitarian with some reformation.
I think we can say, based on our financial status, that we're going to exist. We may not exist exactly the way we are now, but we have enough financial wherewithal that we're not going to wither away and disappear.
Any other, I do want to recognize the challenge also that Judy mentioned, which is finding ways to connect with our folks who either by inclination or choice don't engage as much technologically. That's a known challenge that we've got lots of people working on, but it is one that I do want to keep in our mind as a group. So if those are the challenges, then the next question to the panelist is what do we want to see from the congregation in the next year? How do you want to see the congregation show up? In what ways?
Well, we want to see 40 people registered for Beloved Conversations, for sure. I think
You stole
that's,
that from me, Trevor.
I know, I'm sorry, but it's, I got here first. But I do think that, the board did have we had a virtual retreat, and we really thought about what do we want to do for the next 12 months. And that was one of the pieces that the board absolutely felt very strongly about, is that we need to look at these issues of dismantling white supremacy, both, inside ourselves in the congregation. And this is a good moment for us to spread the principles and the messages of Unitarian Universalism to the wider community. There's a need for that. And so I think that's big on there. And so there are lots of places for people to get involved with that. I think the other part that we need is, I think we need to think about where can people use their time and talents to help us make the transition to whatever's next, and volunteer to do online RGL programs, to step up and serve on committees to think about new ways of doing things. I mean, there's so many wonderful volunteers for our church, and so many people have been using their talents for us. But I want to see that continue, because it keeps us connected. I mean, the whole apart but together thing, that's the piece that absolutely, we've got something special. We absolutely do, and this is how we maintain it, is part by stepping up and helping. And I also know that there are a lot of ideas out there, which is hopefully one of the things that comes out from the most recent survey, that people have that we haven't even implemented yet or even thought about. And so the more that we hear about that, better. And if you've got talent in any of those areas, we will welcome your time for helping as well. So sorry, Lori, I took your thing, but you can repeat it again, because it's worth saying.
40 people at least.
I think we need to have fun with the virtual auction. I think a lot of people really enjoy that once a year auction that we would have. And I think I've participated in various ones with the Bar Foundation and Women Judges and whatever. And people can have fun with it virtually. It's just a lot more work.
I want the members to be self-advocating. I want them to start asking for help instead of us going to them and asking if they need help. I think the more we can empower individuals to say, don't wait for us, you can generate some enthusiasm yourself. Then we can start connecting enthusiastic people together. But I think there's this void of waiting to be reached out to, and I think we've got to. That's how I would like the community, the congregation to show up, is to not wait for us to solve the problems, but to speak up and say, I've got a problem, or maybe I don't even know if it's a problem, but I miss you people, and this is something I am thinking about. But making space for that, I think, is really, that's what I would like to have happen, I guess.
Yes to all of that. So definitely, I think that there is space for anyone who wants to do deep work within racial justice work, dismantling white supremacy. I would love to see as many congregants as possible take advantage of that and really explore that within themselves. I'm with Judy. I would love to see people feeling comfortable enough and that our church is a safe place to come with your needs, because we are a caring group of people, and we want to help each other. And I think living our principles that way is useful. And you know, sometimes we don't know when a person is needing something. Let's face it, as human beings, we're pretty good at being self-sufficient and not wanting people to think less of us because we have a problem, right? Additionally, I think we are a church of a lot of very creative, talented people. And while the board has the fiduciary responsibilities for the church, I think that there are ways that are still out there and untapped for us to create some financial liquidity. You know, we've had the mask making and the coffee sales and the chocolate sales, and those are great money makers. There's more stuff out there where we could be using our talents, our gifts to support the church and each other financially, as well as socially. So I would love people to show up for that.
I also just do want to also draw attention to Becky's comment in the chat box, that this is a really important time in Lincoln, in the civic life of Lincoln, for our community in terms of climate resilience plans that UNL and LES and the city have been working on. And this is a moment asking for participation and comment from folks who live in this city. The church, through its building, has made its position on that clear. But there is work to do in broadening that conversation past our building. So one of the things that's happening this fall is that this is the 150th anniversary of the founding of the Universalist Society in Lincoln. And so any number of us have been thinking about history quite a bit for the last year and the last months. So I want to frame my last question to the panel in terms of history. When we, when the history of the Unitarian Church is written 20 years from now, what do you want the history to say about this period in the life of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln? How do you want this to be remembered?
I think we want to show that we live our values. I think as both Trevor and Lori have talked about our task force on white supremacy, the implementation of that is really a part of the values that we have at the church. I think when we made the plan for our next 5 years, we talked about a building and all these sorts of things. Well, we really can't get into that now because we don't know how long our financial problems are going to exist, but we can do other things. We can get involved in the climate like Becky suggested here in Lincoln. We can do activities to reflect our values in the community. And certainly in this time when many people have lost their jobs, doing things to improve the lives of others is very important.
I've been looking at the history and mostly through Margaret Seymour's book. And it's interesting, there's details written about the minister, and there's details written about the specific programs, but it's really hard to capture the culture of the community in a history book. So I think technology will allow us to actually record some of these meetings, and to actually record some of the good things we're doing and not just talk about it, but actually document it, right? To in 20 years, I think statistics should be on the page that says this is how many people showed up, this is how many Unitarians showed up for this event, for this for anything that happens. I would love us to document those things. So it really is about the congregation. I mean, writing about Oscar is easy because he is one person, but us 300 people, I think in 20 years, I would love for it to say that, the history to say that this group of people made positive change in our community by these, what the bullets are, the individual details.
Yeah, I can't top Judy's hope that it'll be said that this group of people made positive change in the community, because I mean, can't ask for much more than that. But I do hope that, looking back on this in 20 years, that there are more UUs in Lincoln, Nebraska, because I mean, as Oscar said, it's a world that could use more Unitarian Universalists. I mean, I firmly believe that. So I hope that in whatever way, whatever that looks like, because whatever prediction I have is going to be wrong. So whatever I say is going to come out, 20 years from now. But I do hope that, in Judy's words, that these people, this group, who we are right now, made positive change, and also that we have recruited more, and we have more like-minded people that are amplifying that message and amplifying that good work. And they look back on that and they say, this is a group that adjusted, continued to follow its vision, live its principles, and then also grew the numbers and grew the influence. So if that would happen, that would be fantastic. Couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, I think what I would love to see in our history is a story, a true story, if you will, of how our church impacted the Lincoln community in positive ways, through cultural exchange, through working towards eliminating systematic racism, towards helping those in need, whatever that need is, that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln becomes the big player, if you will, in terms of churches that people look to for positivity.
And one of the ways we can grow is through our activities in the community. I think it's the people we know and meet that can become our new members. That's how churches grow.
So those are the questions that I've prepared. I think before we open it up, I'll pose this to the panelists. Are there questions that you have for each other or topics that we didn't ask that you want to make sure we touch on? Okay. This is scheduled to go until 5:30. So I'll, at this point, open it up to questions from the congregation. And then once those have run their course, if we end a little bit early for dinner, that won't be the worst thing. But for now, let's open it up to questions from the gathered congregation.
I have a question about doing the work of dismantling racism. I know one has to begin with inside oneself, but there's also talk about reaching out to the community, and I'm really frustrated with how I do that when I am isolating. In another month, I'm going to be 70, and I take care of she will be 95, a 95-year-old, and I cannot risk getting COVID. So I don't go out except when I'm taking her to the doctor. I really limit where I go and what I do. So what do I do?
So that's a really excellent question, because that's not an uncommon question, actually. And it's one I wrestle with as well, because I am, I help take care of my elderly mother-in-law who has a lot of health risks. Really, what we are learning in the task force is that you first must do the internal work. The external work with community and so forth, we all want to do that because that's visible, that's in many ways tangible, and it's the sexy part of being an anti-racist, right? But really, until you dig deeply into those conscious or unconscious biases that were ingrained in us from the moment we were born, we can actually be very inefficient or spin our wheels or even hurt people that we're trying to help because we don't know any better. And so the task force is really using this next church year to help folks do that internal work. Beloved Conversations is a great way of doing that. We're also doing, just within the task force ourselves, the workbook called Me and White Supremacy. And that's certainly something that we could think about doing with a larger part of the congregation after we've been through it once. So what the task force is asking is be patient. We all want to get out there and do something impactful right now with our community, but we have to proceed with care when we do that. That doesn't mean that you can't do things now. So doing things like writing to your legislators, your lawmakers, your city council, what have you, those are important things to do when you see policies or rules that are going to be harmful to people that are not white, right? You could do that. There are ways to support nonprofit organizations that assist people that typically fall into those categories that are, people that are typically oppressed by systematic racism. So you're not out there protesting in a march, right? But you're still doing something. Letters to the editor. I've written a few myself, and they can be impactful. Maybe they don't change somebody's mind, but at least the people that I'm writing it for know they have an ally. And sometimes that's just as important. So,
Lori, is there any way to invite some of the young people who organized the recent marches to talk to us? So it's not a bunch of white people talking about what we can do, but some young people who can tell us what their life is like and how they perceive it and what their hopes are. I think we spin in place with this sometimes because we're all, the Beloved Conversations will be great because we won't be talking to a closed group. It's going to be broader. But I would love to hear from those. I mean, there are a couple of very prominent young people who made those marches happen and kept them civilized. So I'd love for them to come and talk to us through a Zoom meeting. You don't have to go out for that.
I'm going to jump in here too and say that one of the places that you can get involved is that there's a lot of civic life in Lincoln that is available online right now. And so one of the places, this is actually probably me taking off my minister hat and putting on my old public policy hat, but one of the places where the most policy change happens and the most civic life happens that does not get a ton of attention is city council meetings and public comment periods. And one of the wonders of this moment is I've now gotten a whole lot more familiar with how to live stream stuff from the city and participate in listening sessions that the city is holding where we're hearing from the folks organizing in Lincoln directly. And that's a real eye-opening thing, just to not come with an agenda, but to just listen, to just hear. It's there, it's out there. And we have an opportunity to participate in it now that's very present.
mm-hmm.
Dory's got her hand up. Dory, if you could unmute yourself.
Thank you. I got the message. This is a bit of a teaser. Let me give you a little history. I'm currently with Steve Lyric, the co-chairman of the Sorensen Lecture Committee, which we did have something that didn't get into the newsletter, but there will not be a lecture this fall for obvious reasons. Part of the reasoning is that our committee has been meeting. Jackie Kale and I were very fortunate to be able to go to kind of a town hall webinar, sort of, what was a Zoom meeting because we could see each other, of the NAACP Youth Council. They had a meeting in July and they shared results of a survey that they had done as an educational experience about how youth were feeling about coming back to school. So that was part of the issue. The last 20 minutes were spent with these young people talking about inadequacies within their educational experience in terms of history and so on. It was fascinating. So at any rate, I talked with the Sorensen Committee, and we have committed ourselves to hopefully next fall, certainly by then we'll be back in the church, but we would like to have, rather than an individual lecture, to have a panel of these young people. So Judy, there's part of your answer. To have a panel of these young folks, along with some of the folks that have been working with them and talking around. I mean, we're very broad at this point. We're meeting in a couple of weeks to try to refine that a little bit. But we feel that the young people's voices need to be heard. One of the reasons that we decided not to do it this fall is because these young people have enough going on in their life right now that to try to plan a panel for our use would be ridiculous. But also that just the logistical concerns. And we feel like that kind of an opportunity needs to be in person. And we really are excited about the prospect of doing that. There are a lot of folks in our community that are working with these young people, but this is a NAACP Youth Council that is in existence. And they were incredibly wonderful and forthcoming and very specific in the kinds of concerns they had. So that's a teaser for like a year from now. I hate to tell you it's that far away, but by that time we'll have a lot more experience under our belts and be able to, we really see a great need to deal with racial issues and racial justice. So pretty excited about that. Lori's husband's on the Sorensen Committee, so he knows about you. Yay, woo! So there's your teaser. So you got a whole year to wait for it, but sorry. But at least we got something in the hops.
And I think, Becky, do you want to tell the people how they can get on the emails from the church to hear what to do about climate change and the environment?
I mean, I don't know how to go forward. It doesn't seem like when we put things in from Green Sanctuary, it makes a big difference. At least that's the frustration from me. Right now, people can write to LES. The timeline for LES setting their goal for decarbonization is that they plan to have a plan that they give out in October and vote on it in November. And there is a petition that I could probably send to Jean to do in a e-blast that Zach Renshaw has put together, asking them, but also each one of us writing a letter to board@les.com saying that their decarbonization goal has to be quite bold at this point, would be helpful. And the city plan is supposed to come out. The latest word that we have is that comes out on October 6th when Lyrian gives her State of the City address. And after that, there is going to be a public input period. And I just think they need to hear from every single one of us in support and also an encouragement to do. I mean, I don't know what this is going to look like. Kim Morrow gave a very good presentation to the Mayor's Environmental Task Force last Thursday, where she kind of outlined some of the areas that this resiliency plan is going to take, but they're not releasing it until October. But this is a really important time. And we're encouraging the university to work with the LES and with the city, because all of them are coming out with these plans at the same time. And it needs to be needs to be coordinated. Anyway, that's what I know. I don't know how to, I mean, I am feeling that the church is so concentrated on the racial issue, and I'm not trying to disparage that at all. But I just don't see us working on climate issues, and this is really an important time for our city to be doing that. And so I don't know what Green Sanctuary Committee should be doing to try to get that word out. I really don't.
And I just want to remind folks that environmental concerns, climate concerns impact people who are typically oppressed or systematically put in a position that is not considered privileged. So what Becky's talking about folds right into that social justice, racial justice work that we're doing. So it's all interconnected.
I realized when I filled out that survey that it was kind of a quick take. And as I'm sitting here with all of you right now and reflecting on what our staff has done this year, Trevor, I'm hoping that when we look at staff salaries, we look at an increase because of all the work they've done, besides the fact that they just deserve it, and put out an ask to the congregation. Because for me, when I filled out that survey, I just said, yeah, I'll continue my pledge. But I didn't think about the fact that, my gosh, I really want our staff to get an increase because they've held us together. I'd really like to have us increase our streaming capacity to whatever we need in order to hold us together online. And I'd be willing to pay for that. Why didn't I think about that when I filled out the survey? Don't take my word on that survey to be the last word. Give me an opportunity to step up if you don't see other cuts that would allow an increase for staff salary and increase technologically for what we need. And I'm not sure what else, but just ask us, okay?
I'm going to take a minute here. Priscilla did ask a question in the chat, and I'd like to go ahead and address that. She did ask how many people are registered for the Beloved Conversations, and can we invite people in the community who are not members of the church? And this was actually something that we talked about in our workshop earlier today. But yes, right now we have 28 people that had registered through that link in the e-blasts earlier this month, indicating they were interested in attending. We also had several people during our workshop indicate that they were interested in attending Beloved Conversations. So we should have at least over the 20 person threshold to get the full 20% discount for everyone. As far as inviting people in the community who are not members of the church, yeah, absolutely. We can totally do that. The only caveat is that if they are not members of the church, we cannot use COLE funds to do the matching because we do have that matching fund situation available for church members who are wanting to participate in Beloved Conversations. It covers up to $60 towards that $120 registration fee. But if you've got somebody who's not a church member who would be interested in this, yeah, totally. Let's get them included. And if you want further information about that, feel free to send me an email, and I can give you some more information about that to provide to your friends in the community.
And also, if they sign up as a part of our group, they can get the 20% discount on the price. And so that would be $120 if they go in as our group rather than registering individually. They just can't get the coal match.
All right, it is 5:15. Any last questions or thoughts?
Oh, this is Molly. This is very minor, except I wanted Becky to know, a lot of you know that Marvin's building us a house out in the country. He has his solar well and it's working to bring the water up, and he's getting the solar panels for the house. And it'll probably still be another year, but we're working on it in our own little corner of the world.
And I just saw pictures today on Facebook that Christy has put a solar array on her roof of her house. So, whew, I'm a little envious.
I've never heard of a solar well.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for your time, both in this session and throughout the day. I know I see some familiar faces here from, I think Karen and I started the day many hours ago with the new member class. So thank you all for your time and care throughout this weekend. The next scheduled event as part of this retreat is at 6 o'clock. Chelsea is doing a informational session about online religious education this fall. Chelsea, do you want to say anything to introduce that topic for folks that might be interested?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody is welcome to join. It's not just for families with small children or anything. If you're just interested to know specifics about what we're doing with families and children this year, then please feel free to hop on and join. It'll be very similar to what I'll be presenting at the board meeting. So if you're also on the board, then you can come to either one, but I'll do a short presentation during the board meeting as well.
Board members, please come to the board meeting next week. Any final thoughts from the panelists? And then we'll close it out. All right.
Well, I think the Task Force on Dismantling White Supremacy, when the UUA put out their 2-page proclamation, Becky, it included environmental issues because that is a part of how the indigenous and people of color have been impacted. So I think that can be integrated in what we do.
I think belonging to this church makes me a better person. And I'm always reminded of that when I'm with everybody. I know we can't be together right now, but this is a pretty good way of being together, and you fill me up. So thank you.
All right. The other thing happening tonight is a movie night at 7 o'clock. If you want to just come and not talk or think about the church, but just enjoy watching Inside Out with a bunch of gathered Unitarians. All right. If I don't see you there, have a great night, everybody. And we will pick back up again tomorrow morning.